Hey, howdy, hey, folks. It is Miss Johnson with the Agro Wisdom Channel. We're doing FFA Lullabies, Cattle Country, Peter French by Giles French, who again is not related. We just ended talking about some of the aftermath. The court case about Dr. Glenn's death, and some of the implications to Peter French with that. And so we're going to talk about, we're on page 109, and we're going to talk about Peter French, the man. So let's jump into it. In the year of Glenn's death, Peter French had been in Oregon 11 years, and had become boss of one of the largest and best managed cattle spreads in the West. He was respected by his contemporaries. Rancher Henry Miller envied him his location, calling it the best in the country. John Devine wished he had French's drive and ambition. Most of the things that have been written about French, or by those who never saw him, were prejudiced for or against him, or had little understanding of the country or the times. Efforts to romanticize or disparage him have been numerous. Among those who knew him personally, pioneer stockman Bill Hanley, who first came to Grant County in 1879, had this to say. French was the outstanding one of them all. A little damper man with his cane, he had looked like a dancing master. Slim built and wiry, he never weighed over 125 pounds, and had very dark hair and skin and very brilliant eyes. He was all business, active, and quick in decisions, always the real boss, and he knew the country and everything in it. A splendid vaquero, he was good with the rope and preferred a well-worn saddle. He brought up many of the best vaqueros of California, and every one of his men had his own string of good saddle horses and the best vaquero equipment. They were all under control, but always loyal to the boss. A hard worker, he kept himself going, and everyone else too. Archie McGowan, son of the storekeeper George McGowan, who named Burns, used to say that Peter French was responsible for the development of Harney County, for without his drive and foresight, it could not have been the successful cattle country it is. McGowan described Peter French this way. He was a bundle of nerves and was both loved and hated. Most men who worked for him admired and respected him, but he was a driver. He was not so much a man to talk as he was to act. He built fences as fine and as straight as an arrow 60 years ago, and some of them are standing today. His willow corrals were models. Peter also took pride in his appearance and always kept neat and clean. He was not a drinking man and did not approve of gambling. Although the reputation of Peter French has always been shaped to fit the fiction writer's conception of a land-hungry overlord, evidence to justify that characterization is insufficient. As long as control was in his hands, he had little trouble with the stockmen or settlers who lived in the Blitzen Valley or around Mulehare Lake, although there were some disputes. French engaged in local affairs and experienced the usual disagreements, but no more than could be expected. French liked to dance, and women liked to dance with him, whether because of his grace or his reputation for success. Dances were a popular form of entertainment in the late 19th century, with most of them being held in homesteaders' or settlers' cabins. The scanty furniture was stacked outside, and the fiddler was perched in a corner above the dancers. When Burns grew large enough to support a dance hall, French attended dances there. There are stories that French was a ladies' man. Dave Shriek recalled a sort of contest between himself and French for favors of a lady of the community, the result of which caused Shriek to hold eternal enmity towards the victor. All this seems reasonable and natural. Liking women detracts from no man. There are a few old wives' tales that his interest in the fair sex occasionally exceeded propriety. But, truth or fiction, it would not have been out of character, nor in conflict with the customs of his day. He was well acquainted in Burns, patronized its stores, hobnobbed with its citizens, and attended parties of young folk. Though much older, he was always a welcome addition. That might be a typo in the book. Oh well. Wherever something was going on, he could usually be found, for he was impatient and at inactivity. When Peter came to town, small boys flocked around because he passed out silver dollars to them in the manner of some grandee, and such was his background that he could have seen himself in that role. French was always a regular contributor to the Methodist Church in Burns, especially to the Christmas program when gifts were distributed to children, and he was quick to help those in trouble. Once, when he was in Burns, a house caught on fire. Townsmen rushed to the scene with buckets. While some pumped water from the well, others carried it. French climbed atop the house, better to direct the distribution of water. Missing his step, he fell to the ground. Typically, he shook himself off and climbed back on the roof. Grover Jameson recalled that when French drove in from the P Ranch, often in one day, with a change of horses at the Sod House Ranch, he would ask the boys to wait a few minutes. Then he would cross the street to the livery stable. From the livery stable to the Trish and Dolligan saloon, get a pocket full of silver dollars, one for each boy. The family of George McGowan went often to the White House in the French buckboard. Then the boss would help Mrs. McGowan and the children into his rig and drive them home because he liked the children. He gave trinkets to the little boys who came to his house if they were very little, and he took them riding with him if they were large enough to handle a pony. He talked along with them about interesting things and let them do small errands to stimulate their desire for responsibility. Peter French was a gentleman, and with small boys he was a gentleman. He was a gentleman, but that did not prevent his pursuing his own way in business and the occasional discomfort of other men. A man may be easy with colts and stern with older horses that are supposed to know what to do. Peter French liked music. Julian Boyard, former editor of the Burns Times Herald and son of the first editor, used to tell of his visits to the P Ranch as a boy, and of riding over the country in a buckboard with the big boss. Together they would sing ballads they knew of cattle trails. Cowboy songs, as they are now known, were not yet written and probably would not have been sung by a cowman of 1880. But French, then in his 30s, and Julian Bird, still in his teens, may have harmonized over both Buffalo Gal and Sweet Betsy from Pike. French gave young Julian the run of P Ranch, and years later Julian recalled one of French's little jokes. He told me to hunt anything on his ranch, but never shoot a quail. One day I killed a crane. Pete said that it was a mighty fine bird and that we'd have to eat it. All through dinner, Pete spoke of what a nice crane it was. I didn't want to eat it, but found that what was on my plate tasted wonderful. Wasn't until afterwards I found out that it was one of Pete's pranks. He had the Chinese cook get rid of the crane and serve turkey instead. An old cowhand of Harney County recalled that when he was a boy in his teens, he rode south from the Grand Ronde Valley to see a bit of the world and eventually reached the Blitzen Valley with a tired horse and an empty stomach. Riding across the flat, he was suddenly surrounded by a bunch of wolfhounds, and Peter French rode up with a big horse to inquire what he was doing there. When the cowhand explained his presence, French told him to drop in at any of his camps for a meal. The man later worked on the P Ranch for many years. The keeping of wolfhounds to hunt coyotes was common in eastern Oregon. Among men who liked the sport of watching the dogs catch and disintegrate a coyote after a long chase that men could follow on horseback if well mounted. Coyotes were the arch enemy of French's cattle. The house French built on the P Ranch apparently just grew. He did not have the title to the land until 1882, and by that time it was in need of a larger house than the small quarters in which he lived during his first years in Oregon. The single-story part of the house in the center was but 16 feet wide. The second-story section to the right, west, was presumably French's bedroom. The eastern two-story part of the house was a later addition, built after there were more need to entertain business and personal guests, nearly all of whom stayed overnight because there were no other accommodations within 70 miles. It was essentially a bachelor's house, owned and occupied by a solitary man and kept by a Chinese cook. Nevertheless, Peter French had some fine things in his house. There were some beautiful pieces of furniture, some excellent leather goods, along with some grotesque bits. Bruce Baird remembered an old chair in the White House on the P Ranch, in which he was permitted to sit in as a boy. When, as a boy, he visited there. It was made of cow horns, with feet of wolves and arms of huge horns. In these comfortable headquarters, French kept his books on engineering, his tracts on cattle and their management, and his pamphlets on irrigation and drainage. He was a cattleman who never guessed about management and improvement. He studied it. Visiting cattlemen and cattle buyers were glad to be invited to visit in the home of the boss of Blitzen. With all his conviviality, French was a lonely man, as bosses usually are. Yet he had plenty of business problems to occupy his thoughts, as well as the management of thousands of acres of land and thousands of head of cattle and horses. His work required daily, almost hourly attention. To handle all this, while at the same time paying off the Glen's notes, was a burden French made no effort to evade. Glen had given him his start. He would help the family. Marriage to Ella strengthened a loyalty already present. Friends advised him to branch out for himself, which he undoubtedly could have done, but he refused. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. I am done reading for right now. That's the end of that chapter. So when I say good night, I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you learned something. I hope you're enjoying the story. So without further ado, I will let you go, and I'm going to do one last chapter today. And I will see you then. Thank you. Bye.